welcome to Your Health Collective. Today's episode is all about gluten. Gluten is the new fad. Are you on board with it? Is there evidence behind going gluten-free, and is it actually a healthier option for you? Gluten, Elise, where's it found?
Gluten is found in a whole range of places. However, the most likely places that you're going to find gluten is in grains such as wheat, barley, rye and oats. Not to mention processed packaged foods such as sauces and soup mixes, a whole range of other things.
It's hidden. Gluten's often not labelled on the labelled. It's actually hidden in a lot of products. So you need to look for the words like barley and wheat and rye, and that means there's gluten inside. How does gluten work, Dee?
So, good question. Gluten, when it enters our body, actually causes a big inflammatory reaction. Now, a simple way to think about this is to think about your gut being like a fence around your house. When we eat gluten, it's almost like it punches a hole in the fence. So if there's a hole in the fence,
that's one way to describe it.
Yeah. That's it. If you've got a hole in the fence around your house, all of a sudden you might get stray cats and dogs coming through. So the immune system within the body starts to fight that off. So that's like you standing in your garden with the brooms, whacking those cats and dogs away, getting rid of them. Unfortunately, though, we actually start to whack away some of the good things too.
Yeah. So you're saying that sort of defence mechanism is coming in from gluten, but also other things from what we eat actually gives you that same mechanism.
That's right, yeah. And it means then that if you're having a meal that's got gluten in it, that also has some really nutritious food, we don't absorb those nutrients. And you can imagine if you're standing in your garden with a broom whacking things away, you're hardly going to build a veggie patch in that time or plant a flower bed. So it means that the body can't heal and repair as well as it needs to.
Yeah. So those kind of we like to liken that fence with all the holes is very much like leaky gut. So a lot of people have heard the concept of leaky gut before, and that's definitely what we're talking about here, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's every time that you're eating a food such as gluten that is mounting an immune response in your body, and what that immune response is doing is causing inflammation. And how that translates in terms of signs and symptoms might be gut-related symptoms, so we're talking about things like bloating and gas and flatulence and pain, of course, but they're not only isolated to gut-related symptoms. So some of the other sorts of symptoms that you might experience from a reaction to gluten are also systemic. So some of those, that we see often in practice might be more skin-related symptoms, poor energy, immune dysfunction.
Yeah, so sleep is another one. Sort of broken sleep, brain fog. I know that sort of brain function, acuteness of brain sort of happens, and that's something that you've definitely experienced with gluten.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that for myself. That if I eat gluten, all I want to do is have a sleep, and my brain, it's like my brain just doesn't work properly. So it's as though I'm trying to think, but the dots just don't join together. And, for me, that means obviously I can't work properly and do the things I need to do. And so that's a reason for me that I've keep that out of my diet.
Gluten. Yeah, so this response actually happens in 100% of the population. So this isn't something that just happens to someone who's a celiac, who actually has a gluten intolerance. This happens to everybody. And I think that's really important. And the symptoms depends on who you are and how your body fights that immune response.
Yeah, so just to clarify, I guess what we're saying is that on one end of the spectrum we've got celiac disease, which is an allergy to gluten, but then there's a whole spectrum of what's called non-celiac gluten sensitivity. And really what we're saying is that this reaction that occurs, whether in some people it may not be as severe, but it still is happening. And I guess what we're encouraging you to do is, again, listening to your body and understanding the signs and the symptoms that are caused when you eat gluten. And what we are encouraging you to do is actually do a challenge to see, do you feel better off gluten or do you feel worse on gluten?
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting thing too that sometimes we don't relate maybe that really bad mood that you have, 3 days later is actually due to the gluten that you've eaten 3 days prior. So it can be very surprising for a lot of people. They expect only to see the digestive symptoms. And, to see how that mood or your anxiety level might actually shift days later from eating gluten, gluten can affect your body for a good week or so in a very strong way after eating it.
Yeah, I agree. I think I found it very hard to recognise the symptoms in myself of why to avoid gluten. I was like, I'm fine, I don't bloat, I'm right, no worries.
What were some of the symptoms that you experienced?
Well, it wasn't actually until I removed it 100% of the time and then put it back in, I was like, Oh, I'm a little bit sleepy. Oh, I don't really function quite the same.
Yeah.
And that's all I really got. But knowing underneath I've got thyroid health, there's a lot of reasons why gluten is not my friend. So it pays to sort of take it out and then reintroduce it. So we challenge you to that. We challenge you to take our challenge. Jump on our website. We've got a step-by-step guide on our website that you can download, which will give you all you need to know. Jump on board with our Facebook page. Let us know what's going on. Your health is in your hands. Start listening to your body, and we look forward to seeing you again.